All right, guys. Good news, bad news. The good news is for you guys, I have decided I'm not going to. Well, I'll start with the bad news. Bad news is I caught whatever stomach bug my kid had, and so was sick yesterday. The bad news is I was too sick to make a video. The good news for you guys is I was too sick to make a video. So we're going to combine all of Chapter 4 into the rest, what's left of Chapter 4 into this lesson for you all. So you do not have anything out of class to watch or anything like that. We will, God willing, and all things being healthy, be back to our normal 3 lecture a week schedule next week. So we're going to do a quick recap. You should be reading Chapter 4. Last class we talked about kind of freedom of speech and what civil liberties are, the difference between civil rights and civil liberties. This week we want to distinguish between the Establishment Clause versus Free Exercise Clause and identify which one is which. This is freedom of religion. We want to analyze a religion case using a simple government role versus the burden versus neutrality and coercion framework. We want to explain what right to privacy means, although we've talked about it a little bit in constitutional terms, even though the word isn't in the text. We want to distinguish procedural due process versus substantive due process. We'll probably skip that because I put that in last time. And yeah, that's our main learning objectives for today. So today we take our toolkit and apply it to religion and privacy, 2 areas where the tests and trade-offs matter a lot. So when we talk about freedom of religion,
I don't think your camera's on.
Curse you, kid. Oh, it says it is.
See it right now.
Yeah. That would be because it's... Yeah. What's up? The red dot came on?
No, but it has a timer at the top that says it's going.
Okay, perfect. Bizarre. Sorry, guys. We want to make sure we were getting this for you folks at home. All right, as I was saying, when we talk about freedom of religion, everybody knows that. Like, everybody's like, I've got freedom of religion. You don't. Freedom of religion is nowhere in the Constitution. What is in the Constitution is the Free Exercise Clause and the Anti-Establishment Clause. And together, we kind of meld these together to say you have freedom of religion. So what do they mean? The Anti-Establishment Clause says that the government can't establish or endorse or coerce a religion. There can't be a national religion. And a lot of you are thinking to yourself, like, wait a minute, don't we do that already? It's going to be interesting when we kind of meld this with the concept of freedom of speech in just a minute. Then there's the Free Exercise Clause, which says the government can't prohibit religious practices, especially by targeting a specific religion. They can target some religious practices. They can, for example, make it illegal to, let's say that you're like, I'm an Aztec and I believe in human sacrifice. Well, they can say, no, you can't perform human sacrifice, but they're not saying, no, you can't, practice that religion. They're saying, we don't condone murder. The simplest framing to kind of think through this is that establishment cases ask, is government supporting or pressuring religion? And the free exercise cases ask, is government burdening religion, especially unfairly or especially because it's one religion versus the other? For example, if Lincoln University had a policy that said that prayer is okay, but prayer can only be conducted standing and facing to the west, well, Muslims pray kneeling or kind of, I don't know how to describe the position other than to be like downward dog, which is the yoga pose. And they traditionally face the east. So if they're doing things that are targeting one religion versus the other religions, that's going to be a problem. So religion cases are about the government's rule supporting religious I can't talk today. Religion cases are about the government's role, supporting religion, restricting religion, or staying neutral. So let's drill down into the Establishment Clause. There's one thing I really want you to spot. You don't need to go super deep into the doctrine or history of this to get it, but I'm going to try and give you a really quick, easy decision tool here. Establishment spotting checklist. So when government is involved with religion, we're going to ask, what is the government doing? Funding, speech, rules, displays, school activity, things like that. So how is the government actually involved in this? Second, is anyone being pressured or coerced, especially in school? If I started school prayer, or if I started each class with a class prayer, and I gave participation points for that class prayer, that's coercion. That's not something that is going to be okay. Is government appearing to endorse one faith or religion over another? Or are they trying to endorse religion over non-religion? 4, is it neutral and broadly available? So for example, is funding available to many different groups under neutral criteria? One thing that's really interesting is the use of public spaces. If we're going to allow Lincoln University, if Lincoln University is going to allow a Christian church to use the auditorium for services, that's something you can do. The community can rent out space at a university typically. Then they also have to allow a Jewish organization to do that, or the United, I call it the United Church of Satan, but the Satanists to do the same thing. Because if they're going to allow access, they have to allow equal access. And then finally, what is the context? Is this school versus public space? That's going to matter a ton here. So most common red flags are coercion and favoritism. Because we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of you, I was going to try and divide you up into groups, but we're just going to do these scenarios pretty quickly. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and I want you to think about whether this is establishment, whether there's a concern about establishment, whether it's probably okay, it's neutral, and or C, whether it depends. We need more facts. They must say what facts you need. So here are the 4 scenarios. 1, a public school teacher leads a prayer at the start of class. Foreshadowing, right? Is that going to be coercive, probably okay, or it depends?
Depends.
What does it depend on?
Like you said, if it has participation points or not, or like any gain out of it for the students, if they partake in.
Yeah. Anyone else feel differently about that? Are you raising your hand in the back? Yeah, another thing I think it would depend on is what age you are when we do this. If I were to lead a prayer and it was relatively non-denominational and I didn't tie anything to it and I did it like right before class began, it might be okay. If you guys are first graders, even that sort of thing that's like just there for your consumption if you want it, might seem more coercive because of the peer pressure and stuff involved. Good catch. All right, 2. A city allows any community group, religious or not, to use a public meeting room under the same rules.
Neutral.
Neutral, so it's probably okay? Yeah, I agree. 3, a county places a religious symbol alone on the courthouse steps as the official holiday display. Shoot. Go for it. What are your thoughts?
That's difficult
I'd say, oh man, is it a county courthouse? You said?
Yep.
I think that's okay
Why do you think it's okay?
because they're not declaring it as the only religion.
Mm-hmm. So this is fascinating because it runs up against the cases on this are really fascinating, and I love teaching this in my advanced school law class. I used to teach for another university because it shocks my students typically. Normally, you'd think that hey, if we're going to if the county is displaying one religious emblem, that's a problem, right? Well, when it comes to things like art, the Supreme Court has held that the government has a free speech right too. And that free speech right is going to trump the free religion right. And the case about this is that there's a sculpture park, and the political subdivision decides that they're going to put a statue containing the Ten Commandments up. And a Satanist group sues to basically force them to either take it down or put one of their emblems up. And the city or whatever says, no, we're not going to do that. And what makes it different here is that the sculpture park was curated. It was something that kind of like an art display, they were deciding what went into it. And so the Supreme Court said, no, freedom of speech, that's fine. It makes it really tricky when you deal with something like putting up holiday decorations. I think the answer here is it depends quite a bit on how they're doing it. In similar cases, and dealing with a Capitol building, I don't remember which state, but they allowed different groups to establish different monuments on the Capitol grounds. And a Christian group put up a big thing of the Ten Commandments, and they told the Satanist group no to a sculpture they wanted to put up. Well, the difference here is that the county created with the display, the sculpture park, a closed forum. It's something that they are expressing their freedom of speech. But when they're allowing different groups to come in and submit proposals to put monuments on the Capitol grounds, it becomes an open forum. And so in that open forum context, they can't discriminate. So good catch on that. Again, if we go through this framework on this one, and again, I'm drilling down into this one because a lot of these get really sticky. What is the government doing? Is it funding something? Is it speech? Are there rules? Well, this is potentially funding, potentially speech. And because it's potentially speech, it's probably going to be okay. Is the government appearing to endorse one faith over the other? Yeah, that's one of the things that becomes an issue. And so this is where the analysis would probably fall. Is this neutral? Is it something that's broadly available? Or is it something that is non-neutral? It's definitely not neutral. And then finally, what's the context? Well, it's a public space. So again, question. The answer is really it depends. I'd lean towards where you were of probably it's going to be okay. Finally, a state offers a scholarship program open to all students. Some choose religious colleges. Is this going to be okay?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. You can go anywhere you want to go. Rockhurst University, where I went for undergrad, is a Jesuit university. If anybody knows about the Jesuits, they are a order of Catholic priests. I had a state scholarship that went to pay part of my tuition at Rockhurst. It's 100% fine because I just as easily could have gone to Southwest Missouri State or Mizzou. Mizzou. Southwest Missouri State is gone. You guys probably don't even know that. It's Missouri University in Springfield now, I think, or Rolla. So there's that. All right. So with free exercise, we're looking at neutral laws versus targeted laws. Free exercise is basically a core rule set. Here's what we're going to look at when we're looking at the free exercise cases. If the government targets religion or is not neutral, courts are much more skeptical of what's going on. That's going to, when we talked about those levels of scrutiny, which we'll talk about again next class when we get to equal protection, those levels of scrutiny are going to go up when we're targeting one religion over another. Next, if the government applies a neutral, generally applicable law, the government often wins unless there's a special exemption, religion or other constitutional hook. And then finally, the fight is often about exceptions. Do we have to accommodate religious practice here? There's trade-offs here. We're going to trade off the concept of accommodating protected liberties when we can, or too many exemptions can basically create unfairness or undermine rules. I once thought about, I had ChatGPT help me create a religion. In my religion, which was called Beach-Tafarianism, you're required to make a 2-week pilgrimage to the coast. And my argument was that I should get 2 extra weeks of vacation time per year so I could practice my faith. I do believe that everybody would be better off if they went to the beach once a year. But that's the sort of thing that you can take it to the extreme. Do you need to not work on Saturdays because you're an Orthodox Jew and cannot work on the Sabbath? That's something that we can probably accommodate, and we should accommodate. Can we use Andrew's made-up religion to get extra vacation time? That's where it begins to get absurd. That's where we start having this balancing test of we don't want to create a free-for-all where people can take advantage of it. Free exercise disputes are often fights about whether neutrality means same rules for everyone or reasonable accommodations. So here's a couple of examples of things, and I want you guys to think about whether you think this is, well, here's an example. I want you to think about whether you think this is fair or not. So I'll tell you the scenario in a minute, but I want you to basically ask why an accommodation should exist or why it shouldn't, why the rule should apply uniformly or why it shouldn't. And the scenario is this. A public school has a general rule, no hats indoors. A student says they wear a head covering for religious reasons. Is this something we should apply generally, or is this something we should have accommodations for? Yeah, go.
Accommodations.
And remember, I told you a few minutes ago, the answer is always, or the functional part of the answer is always why.
Because, so I'm just going to use an example of a hijab. That's a deep, important part of that religion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you allowed everyone to wear hats, people would just start abusing the rule who didn't follow a specific set of rules, like religious rules. And the rule is in place, the hat rule is in place because it's probably necessary for something to function. But like the religious thing, do you know what I'm?
Yeah. You're basically looking at it as a balancing test. Like, what's the reason we're doing this versus what are we causing people to give up? And it makes more sense to say, yeah, we can have the rule, but we have exceptions to it for religious reasons than to say across the board nobody wears hats, or across the board everybody can wear hats, right?
It's like if you have a room of people and they're all 6 feet, but one person is just 5 feet.
Yeah,
if you give them all a box to stand on, then everyone's going to be even taller. If you just give the 5-foot person a box to stand on, then they're going to be at equal height with everyone else.
Yeah. Another example of this, so practicing Muslims typically have to pray. Does anybody know how many times per day? Is it 4 or 5? I don't know. They have to pray several times throughout the day. under most state employment laws, you're required a 30-minute lunch break and two 15-minute breaks. Should somebody with who is a practicing Muslim should somebody who's a practicing Muslim be granted additional time to pray throughout the day? What do you guys think? Is this going to be something that we give accommodations for, or is this something where we're going to apply that general 30-15-15 rule?
I don't know, because like you still have before and after work,
Mhm.
and then the 3 breaks during work.
The one thing I should tell you is they have to pray at specific times throughout the day.
I think that was the difference.
I don't remember what they are. I could look it up, but it's like one is at dawn, one is at dusk. I know one is like at noon or something. Yeah, and so the thing about it is we always have this balancing test, and I think that in particular in the United States, we're so concerned that somebody might get something we don't, that we want to create these like catch-all rules that no, nobody can take advantage of the system. And what the right answer is kind of is somewhere in between. I will say that, in terms of things like headdresses, what the Constitution says is that no, we can't say that rule applies to somebody who is doing this for or wearing a hijab or wearing I don't remember the name of a yarmulke.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the Christian one. There's a thing similar to a yarmulke that some really Orthodox Christians wear. I don't remember its name. If you're wearing a hat for that reason, yeah, you should absolutely be immune from that rule. I want to get into a couple of things where kind of the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech overlap. And this deals with one of my most favorite turnarounds that the Supreme Court has ever done, because there are 2 cases that talk about this, and they're about 5 years apart. One was in the late 30s, the other one was in the mid 40s, and they completely reversed decisions. And this deals with saluting the flag. So did you guys, when you were in elementary school, did you guys say the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah.
Yeah? Anybody not say it? You laughed. What are you thinking?
There were certain times when I chose not to say it in high school.
Yeah. The act of saying the Pledge of Allegiance has kind of, I think, fallen out of style. And so, I don't think that my kids say it in school. But in the 30s, 40s, it was very important. So there's a case where some Jehovah's Witnesses are in school, and they refuse to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance because Jehovah's Witnesses believe that nobody is above God. And so for them to pledge allegiance to the United States or to its flag is something that is against their beliefs. They believe that God is the only person to whom they should be allegiant. And so they refuse to engage in that. Similarly, it's kind of fascinating, they don't celebrate birthdays because that would be like idol worship. So it's something that they practice. It's something that is a core belief to how they operate. And so you have these kids that are in elementary school, and they say, no, we're just going to sit respectfully, but we're not going to participate in the pledge. What happens to them? Well, some of them get kicked out of school because they have to do this. They have conversations with them. They have conversations with parents. They're not going to do it. They get kicked out of school. The Supreme Court in the 30s says, yeah, the school can totally kick them out. This is something that should be permitted. It's so important for national unity that the government is doing this, that even though it is infringing on their free exercise of religion, the national unity, that argument is going to trump this. It's religion neutral. Everybody has to do it. And so if they don't want to do it, that's tough for them. Does that seem fair?
No, because it's not religiously neutral. It literally says one nation under God.
Right.
Literally.
So in the 1940s, the court does an about face. And in the 1940s, what happens is the exact same fact pattern happens. This time, the Supreme Court says that, no, this is protected speech. Because one thing I forgot to talk to you guys about last time that is pretty important is you have the right to say what you want to say or to say nothing at all. The act of not speaking is the act of speech. And so just as the government cannot compel you not to say things like, I don't like the president or I don't like the last president, they also can't compel you to remain silent. Certain exceptions apply, of course, but with this, the Supreme Court says, no, this is freedom of speech. Their choosing not to speak is protected under the First Amendment, just as even though we ruled 5 years ago that this was okay. Can anybody tell me what happened in the 40s that made the United States just completely turn around their position on that? I usually have one history buff that is like, oh yeah, I got this.
Wasn't that during a time of war?
Yeah, which war?
World War I?
Nope, a little bit later. But you're really close. You're on the right track. It's World War II. What's going on in the world that might make the United States, whereas just a few years before they were all about this national unity, and now they're like, whoa, that's kind of scary. Let's not do that.
Mustachioed man.
Yes, I would say Nazis. It usually comes back to Nazis. Mustachio man is also an equal way of saying that. So in the 30s, you have Germany kind of doing this massive rebound because World War I destroyed them. Their economy is terrible. But throughout the 30s, you have this new movement that is just setting the country on fire with national unity, and their production goes up and they're fixing their economy and they're doing all these cool things that countries around the world like the United States are like, wow, we wish that our children were as on fire for America as they are for Germany. And then the evil starts to kind of come out and people start to say, whoa, this national unity is causing some people to do some bad things. And so I love teaching about this. We go into a lot more detail in my later classes, but I think it's fascinating to see how the events of the time are going to shape how the court is interpreting the law. Even though we're talking about the same law, even though we're talking about the exact same facts, the outcome is completely different. And my conclusion is that it's what's going on in the world that causes people to think maybe this isn't such a good path to be on. All right. So we're going to skip down to this. We talked about that. All right, we need to talk a little bit about the right to privacy. We talked about due process. The court treats this as a liberty because it's in the 5th and 14th Amendment. Privacy is a constitutional idea, even though the word privacy isn't explicitly listed within the Constitution. One thing that's fascinating about this, and I'm just going to show it to you guys because I can't ever get the board to work, is how they came up with it. And how they came up with it was to say that there's the Bill of Rights, and these are our different liberties. But then within the Bill of Rights, all these things kind of hint at something. And the thing that they're hinting at is privacy. And in the opinion that finds this right to privacy, they talk about an astronomical or physics thing called the penumbra. And the penumbra is a type of shadow. And this is a diagram illustrating it, if you guys can see it. But if you look down at your tables, you can see basically like three shadows. There's the actual shadow, which is this dark part, or the umbra. And then there's the penumbra. And that is the light that is going to basically be, it's the second shadow. It's the lighter shadow that is away from you. The easiest way for me to see this is when you're walking down the street and the sun is behind you, or it's night and there's a street light behind you, and there's the dark shadow and there's the light shadow. That light shadow is the penumbra. And so the court literally says that the penumbra of the Bill of Rights is this right to privacy. And so let's talk about what the right to privacy actually looks like. As long as I don't lose my spot in my notes. What the court realizes is there, what the court says that this right to privacy entails, is personal authority in intimate family decisions. Like, are we going to have kids or are we not going to have kids? That's something that you and your spouse should decide, or you and your partner should decide, not the government. Am I going to get married to a white person or a black person? That's something that is a personal choice, not a choice that the government should have any authority over. Bodily autonomy and personal decisions. If I want to wear a mask right now, should I be able to wear a mask? There's some organizations that say, no, you shouldn't. Nobody should be able to wear masks. That's scary. It makes us think about viruses, and we don't want to think about viruses. So this bodily autonomy and personal decisions is something I have the right to talk about. If there's a law saying that I can't have a tattoo to be a professor, can I have a tattoo? Yes, I can have a tattoo. I might have to cover it up, but there's that. And then limits on government intrusion. So this right to privacy says that the government can intrude, it just can't go that far. Courts sometimes recognize rights as fundamentals. We talked about that last time. You have the fundamental right to an attorney. You have the fundamental right to freedom of speech. And the boundaries of privacy rights have changed over time and are politically contested all the time. You don't believe me? Look at the Dobbs decision, where we have Roe v. Wade saying abortion is legal. That is refined over decades, and Dobbs says, no, it's not actually constitutionally protected. The thing I like saying about this, and I've said it in here before, but I'm going to say it again. When we're talking about rights, when we're talking about liberties, the pendulum always swings. And what I mean by that is that right now, we're in a time where it kind of seems like we're at one extreme. It's going to swing back. It always swings back. We can look at the Fourth Amendment as a perfect example. What's going to be an illegal search has been construed to be almost anything, and it has been construed to be almost nothing. But it's always kind of swinging both ways. And you'll have a court that pushes it way far in one direction, and then more judges get on and it gets pushed way far in the other direction. And it's kind of like we're always chasing that elusive middle position. So in practice, privacy cases are fights about whether the Constitution protects a choice strongly enough to limit government power. When you guys are looking at this, I want you to use this framework. So first, I want you to think of the claim that this government action is likely constitutional, likely unconstitutional. I want you to think of a right test. That's number 2, the right plus the test. The relevant liberty is blank, and the analysis used is blank. So with that liberty, it's like establishment, free speech, exercise, due process, and that's going to determine what level of scrutiny we're going to use. And then there's going to be the trade-offs and the counter-arguments. That's part 3 is support. The strongest reason for doing this is it going to be to make things coercive, neutral, fair, or is there some sort of procedure involved? And then finally, what are the trade-offs? The best counter argument for this is what? So if in our school prayer scenario, if we walk through this, if we say Lincoln University is going to create a rule saying that there is not prayer allowed in school, what's the claim? The government action is likely, what do you think? Constitutional or unconstitutional? Just shout it out. Oh, come on, guys. I can give this to you as homework instead, but I don't think anybody wants to do homework.
Is it unconstitutional?
That's a great thing. So we have a vote for unconstitutional. Let's walk through the framework. So what's the right plus the test? The relevant liberty is what? Establishment, free speech, free exercise, just general. Somebody pick one. All right, I'll just walk through it then. The right is probably free, the anti-establishment clause. Can the government establish a religion? Or the free exercise clause, one or the other. And the analysis we're going to use is going to be that beginning one, the rational basis test. So the support of it being unconstitutional is that the government, why would they care? If we say you can't have prayer in school, sure, we don't want it to disrupt academic time, but we do. Why does it matter if it's in the building, not during academic time? So that test we're going to use is the rational basis test. Remember, the rational basis test is this rationally related to something the government historically has done? Yes, it's got the police power. It's concerned about making sure that schools are going to be productive places. So there's that. Is this thing related to that outcome? Maybe, kind of. But is there a better way around it? Absolutely. So our argument for our claim that it's unconstitutional is that it doesn't actually impact school if during passing times I say a quick prayer at my locker, right? And the counter argument against that is that, well, yeah, but what if, my prayers are taking too long and I am now interfering with class time? And we can't have something like that. So it's better just to ban it across the board. Likely it is unconstitutional, so good call. All right, so we've got 5 minutes left. I will try very hard not to keep you guys over this time. What questions do you guys have? Covered a whole bunch of stuff, and we didn't even talk about the criminal stuff. So I will probably, because this went slower than I thought, I probably will release a video that will be optional going over the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments. The 4th Amendment is a lot of fun, as is the 5th Amendment. Actually, I'll say this really fast in here. No, I'll do it next time. We'll talk about how to exercise your right to remain silent next time. We'll start with that to hopefully get your energy going. Any questions, anybody? Sweet. Then have a great weekend, and I will see you Monday. No. Yes, I'll see you Monday. President's Day is next Monday.